Hi there, my name is Chris Doman. I'm the co-founder of EKS Security, and today I'm going to talk about EKS forensics and incident response. So what is the Elastic Kubernetes service? Well, it's the Kubernetes service on Amazon Web Services, which can run either on EC2s, so in that case, you're kind of managing more of the infrastructure yourself, or on Fargate, in which case, for you at least, it's serverless containers. So at a high level, how do you respond to a compromised EKS container or node? There's a few different things. If it's running on an underlying EC2, then there's a bunch of different things you can do around isolating EC2. So you can disconnect from the network, you can image the disk, which then gets all the forensic data. A bunch of things you can do there, multiple different ways, and that's covered in a separate video that we've uploaded here. It's running on Fargate, a little bit different. You can collect data from inside the container, so you can run basic collection inside the container to collect all the data you might need to try and work out what's happened. A couple of quick things around how you might detect that you have an incident in EKS to start with. Well, pretty recently, Guardi's added support for detections in EKS. So you see here an example of successful anonymous access. So perhaps something to investigate, although not necessarily in itself malicious, that one. And there's a bunch of other things too, which are EKS-specific detections now. You may also have third-party tools, say, Aquasec or Wiz or something doing detections too. And the way that this works, and things in Guard-G, is a number of different ways. One thing, you work on kind of more network level. You also work on a control plane, so looking at the audit logs and analyzing them for certain detections. Also at runtime too, so inside looking at kind of system events and then detections based on that. Some of the data sources you might be looking at when investigating EKS, well, they are varied, and we have a separate blog on this again as well. So you have the audit and the control plane logs, normally stored in S3. You have CloudTrail logs, so looking at the actual API operations that your IAM users have executed. You have the Docker container file system, so normally Overlay 2 is the most common file system for the Docker these days, and that's actually all the files inside that system. So if it ends up being something like EKS running on EC2, you can then pull the whole EC2, and then in that disk, you then got all the individual containers files. The Docker logs record things like what Docker containers are started and stopped. So you get this on the EC2, for example. If it's Fargate, you're not going to get this, but in S3, you get some similar kind of logging. And then inside the container itself, and this would work whether you're running on Fargate or not, you can deploy something. In our case, it's Kado host, which will pull back all the files in that container, which you can then analyze to your heart's content. In Kado, it's simple, couple of clicks. You just select EKS or ECS, and then you go through and select what you're going to be importing, depending on whether you're running in EKS or ECS or similar. And this will work for both Fargate and the EC2 equivalent in EKS. Overlay 2, I briefly mentioned before, that is the most common file system you're going to be seeing. Here is an example of an EKS EC2 imported into Kado, where you can see that we have all the different kind of essentially version file system. In this case, the attacker has been combining X and rig on the box themselves. That's actually not that uncommon, because that means it will run cross-platform. You can see here everything that's been happening on the system across that time. Also a bunch stored in S3 as well. So in this screenshot on the bottom right, for example, you can see here, this looks like it is a log from Kubernetes showing certain API calls across, this case, policy and refused. There are additional resources you can check out. So Kube Forensics is a free tool you can get off GitHub. You can dump the current state of a running pod on its containers, so you can then kind of do some offline forensics. We also have a bunch of the Kado side too. So we've also published a bunch of resources and some sample compromised EKS systems too available on GitHub. In terms of remediating, AWS has a good blog on this. There's a few different techniques you can have. First of all, preserve that forensic evidence so you can find out what the root cause was, what was stolen, and such. You can then quarantine the resources, so you can create a network policy, so you can deny ingress and egress, so in and out, traffic to the pod. Attach the security group, which again, will do the same thing as well, or a deny rule. And then also remove permissions, so you have to worry about people to move around your environment, right? So you can do things like removing any kind of access that they might have there. Yeah, and finally, if you'd like to check out Kado Response, we have a free 14-day trial, and it will happily import all the EKS data to your heart's content. Thank you for listening.